everyone, I am Alexa Dunn and I watched the Dan Brown Masterclass so that you don't have to. Except not really, I'm gonna recommend it. I wanted to check it out because I have a masterclass subscription that honestly I haven't really used, and as you know, I've been on kind of like a mission to find better thriller writing resources for people, and I really struck out on the first one that I tried, so I thought, what about trying Dan Brown's masterclass and see if I recommend it? I'm going to give you an overview of what the course is, give you my top line thoughts on it, and then I'm going to share some of like the things that I thought were really good or interesting and I took notes on. I of course won't give you all the good stuff, but have to concede, masterclass is very expensive. It is $180 for a year-long subscription. Now they have a ton of content on the site, a ton of different courses you can take. Is it worth it for a single course? You can actually purchase a single course for $90. No, that's definitely not worth it, because at that point you might as well do the $180 to get access to all the courses. Well, is the $180 worth it? For a single course, I don't think so. So this is just the start. This is the first course I watched all the way through and the first writing course that I completed. I'm going to do a couple more and do similar style reviews for you. And then we can look at masterclass kind of as a whole and whether or not the $180 is worth it for an aspiring writer. So diving in, Dan Brown's masterclass is specifically about writing thrillers. It is a 4-part course. I mean, the 5th part is literally introduction to the author. So it's really 4 parts that matter, 19 chapters, and they vary in length from short-ish, like 8 to 10 minutes, but some of the really meaty chapters are 20 plus minutes. The 4 major parts are how to write a book, research, tools for creating suspense, and the life of the writer. The first section, that how to write a book, some of the things that he covers, finding the right idea, choosing locations, creating heroes and villains, character tools, and chapters and scenes, and that's where he kind of talks about cliffhangers, though he also talks about them in tools for creating suspense. Research and tools for creating suspense are pretty straightforward chapters. He covers those 2 topics. And then I found the life of a writer really interesting and oddly inspirational. It's things that I think are very, very useful to hear. He talks about editing and rewriting, throwing stuff out and starting over. Literal process kind of stuff, and then surviving as a writer and kind of the mindset that you need to be a professional. So, I mean, if it's not clear, I really liked this class. I ended up being very, very surprised. Like, I vibed with Dan Brown on almost everything he had to say, with only a couple of exceptions, which I am going to talk about. He and I have very similar writing processes, other than the fact that he writes at 4 in the morning. He gets up at 4 in the morning to write. Of course, he's a professional writer, so he also writes full-time so he can write all day, but he starts early. Other than that, we have very similar thought processes for how we kind of back into a book idea, ways that we do research, though he can travel lots of places because, again, very rich, professional author. Approach to suspense and character, and so I found the class really reinforcing. I'd say for someone who has already written and is published, there's definitely a little less there. I didn't learn much that was new, though. I did like some of the kind of titles that he gave to things, like the way that he talked about certain concepts was really, really nice reinforcement for me and new ways to kind of tag concepts. But for an aspiring writer or someone who's in the process of writing or hasn't gotten an agent yet, 100%, if you are a thriller writer, I do recommend this course. In particular, I liked how he gave really specific concrete advice on how to bring specificity to your world and your book. I think that's something that doesn't always get talked about, and he's very specific, especially in the research section, like how and locations, how you use the world to build kind of the character of your book, and then you pick your characters to go with the world. I really liked all of that specific stuff. But that does kind of get into the one caveat I think comes with the course, and it's not that surprising. Dan Brown writes a very particular type of thriller and has a very particular writing style. One note to that, even if you're not a fan of Dan Brown, I still think you can get a lot out of this course. He's not sitting there going, my writing's amazing, write like me. It's not that kind of course. It is more writing fundamentals and top line and structure and process. So don't worry about that. Like, I wouldn't say he has my favorite writing in the entire world, but I've definitely whipped through 3 of his books. He's very good at pacing and suspense and cliffhangers and getting people to turn the page, and that is definitely what you're gonna get through this course. But that's the thing. They're very specific types of thrillers. They're kind of those international madcap, the world's gonna end, big stakes, questy, adventure-y type thrillers, if you know what I mean. And as you know, when I've talked about kind of thrillers, and certainly you know the type of thrillers I read and write, I don't read or write those kinds of thrillers. So on some level, you're definitely only gonna get hyper-specific advice on certain topics that apply to those kinds of books, but there's still enough in the course if you write other types of thrillers to get something out of it. And the main kind of specific sticky point where he hyper-focuses on only one type of writing. Dan Brown writes third-person, multi-POV thrillers. And so when he talks about characters, POV, and also some aspects of building suspense, he only talks about third-person, multi-POV books. So if you write third-person, multi-POV books, you're gonna get some really, really good and specific nuggets of advice from Dan Brown. But that thus is the one weak area here. If you write anything else, if you write in first person, if you write in a single POV, third or first, it's going to be a little bit harder because one of his biggest suspense tips is about switching into someone else's POV and picking the right character POV to kind of frame a scene from so that it has the most tension. So you just need to bear that in mind. But overall, I really kind of liked his chill vibe. I liked his point of view. I didn't feel like he was talking down. He's got a very kind of warm, open, honestly humble style, and I think that you can definitely get a lot out of this course. So I'm going to go over just a few of the things that I thought were really, really interesting. Again, I won't give you everything, although in fairness, I only took notes on the things that jumped out at me. It hardly covers the breadth of the course, but to give you an idea. One of the big things he talks about is what he calls the 3 C's, and this is one of those ones where this is something we talk about in storytelling and writing, but I liked his specific monikers for these things and the way he kind of framed and explained them. So there's the contract, which is the promise you make to the reader, the hook / promise of the premise / story question, and you cannot break your contract with the reader when you write a book. You have to keep all of your story promises and answer all of your story questions. He talks a lot about story questions, and that's one of my favorite parts of the course. It really resonated with me. I was like, yes, yes, yes. Next is the clock, which is a ticking clock or time pressure. Layering time pressure on top of your story is what makes it a satisfying thriller. Such good advice. Now, not every thriller has a literal ticking clock, but I've given this advice before. I love this concept that if you are stuck and you're struggling with pacing and stakes, adding a structural ticking clock can be it can be a game changer. So it could be a literal ticking clock. In 24 hours, someone's going to die, and there's maybe a clock, a bomb, like the 24 principle. It could be, we graduate in 3 days. We have to solve the murder before that happens, and so on and so forth. So I love the concept of the ticking clock. And then I really, really liked this 3rd C, which is the crucible. And this is the concept of you cannot let your characters run away. You have to set up and design your story and your conflict and your stakes with your character in such a way that they have to face the villain. There is one path forward. They don't have a choice to walk away. They can't escape. And facing the crucible is the thing that makes your character heroic. Now, Much like James N. Frey in How to Write a Damn Good Thriller, Dan Brown really focuses on the dichotomy of heroes versus villains, which again I think is down to the style of thriller that Dan Brown certainly writes and that also was very popular that James N. Frey was focusing on. So you do kind of have to think a little beyond the constraints of heroes versus villains. Dan Brown likes very clear heroes. They're still flawed, and I liked his character section. And big ass villains, though I also think he had very good advice for making your antagonists more dynamic and interesting. But just bear that in mind. He's gonna talk about heroes and villains a lot. I also like how he outlined the key elements of a thriller, which are high stakes and suspense. Pace makes a book a thriller. Yes, yes, yes. People always ask, well, what's the difference? Because I've called things suspense or light suspense or women's fiction with suspense, a thriller versus kind of a mystery. Pace is a huge part of it, and that ticking clock element plays into that. And part of that pace, and he talks about this as well, I mentioned story questions. They're books that ask a lot of questions very quickly, but also give answers quickly. And this is so true, especially in your Act 2 with a thriller. It's like, what is this? Oh, we found this, but it's not the answer we need. It brings up more questions and it puts us on to the next and the next and the next. Yes. And he closes on, suspense is about making promises. I know, the writer, I know something you don't know, but if you turn the page, you'll find out. So if you've ever read a Dan Brown book, you know that he's very, very good at cliffhangers, sometimes annoyingly so, sometimes they're almost cheaply done, but they work every time. So if specifically you want to learn pacing techniques and cliffhanger techniques, like the class is very good for that. Just a few other top-line nuggets he said that I really, really liked. You have to read critically as a writer in your genre to get a feel for what is your genre. I wrote yes in big capital letters in my notes. Your job as a writer, I love this. Give the reader what they want in a way that they don't see coming. That is all about subverting tropes, which I love. I also loved this nugget he gives in the beginning. There's a big difference between confusion and suspense. Preach. Preach. He talks about story logic. You see, like, basically this masterclass, like, Dan Brown and I think we should get coffee. I just want to, like, talk to him and chill and hang out, because, like, yes. I also really liked this nugget. This is all about finding ideas. He said, don't chase someone else's taste. Write the thriller you want to read. He also says, write what you want to know, not just what you know. And then he talks a lot in the research section about how you're going to research things that are just interesting to you and that fascinate you, and how those are going to open doors for having interesting setups, locations, plot lines, and characters in your book. I mean, why do you think I wrote a boarding school thriller? I've never been to boarding school, but I'm really fascinated by the world. So I like that. Write what you want to know. And choose a topic that you're excited about. The sheer size of a novel is daunting and a huge time commitment, so it needs to be something that you're really excited to work on. And that was just from the introduction. I just got so many good nuggets out of this. Okay, I realized I can't give you some of my favorite highlights of my notes because I'm literally giving you the course. So I want to close on some of the stuff that he said at the very end, which is what I called the writer stuff that I really loved. This one was so good that I rewound it to get it verbatim, which was, the process itself needs to be the reward. Yes. I love how Dan Brown is very, very realistic about how hard it is to write a novel, but not just to write a novel, but to sell a novel, but then beyond that, to see any kind of success. He says it can't be about goalposts and external validation, like getting an agent, selling your book, selling a ton of copies, being a best-selling author, because none of those things are guaranteed and they can be a very, very long game. So if you hyper-focus on those, you're more likely to give up. He says, be committed to the process of building a career and an audience. And also, the book that you write has potential to be popular even if it isn't. And what he means by that, he talked about his earlier books didn't really do much. They didn't sell much. But, you know, he kept writing and he kept kind of going forward in his career. He said his first ever book signing, no one even came to his table. He wasn't very popular. But then when the Da Vinci Code broke out, suddenly his older books got very, very popular. And that's what he meant. Something that you write might not be popular now, but you never know what's gonna happen, especially as you keep forging forward. You don't know which book is going to be your breakout. And finally, I love that he said this because it's just so true. Part of the process is failing, whether that's at writing, at aspects of literally writing, or at publishing. So yeah, in short, I totally recommend this class. If you have a Masterpass subscription, definitely watch it. Even if you don't write thrillers, you can apply a ton of the techniques he goes over to writing any genre, especially all the stuff he talks about with ideas and research applicable across genres. But even the creating suspense part, fantasy stories need to have suspense, sci-fi stories need to have suspense, contemporary romance. You just derive the suspense from something very, very different than in a thriller. Plus, those other genres aren't necessarily going to have the same time restraints or cliffhanger structure, but you can still apply versions of anything that he talks about to writing any kind of book. But yeah, overall, one of the reasons I liked it so much is I liked his vibe. Though, as I mentioned, if you don't already have a Masterclass subscription, I wouldn't subscribe just for this class unless you're pretty confident that you're going to want to watch multiple of the other classes. So to that end, as promised, I'm going to keep watching courses. I had started the Aaron Sorkin one a while ago and didn't finish it, so I'm probably going to finish that one first because I really also love the way that Aaron Sorkin approaches and talks about writing. But let me know down below in the comments, what are some other writing related masterclasses that you might want me to take? The ones they have for writing include Judy Blume, James Patterson, R.L. Stine, Malcolm Gladwell, Neil Gaiman, Margaret Atwood, David Sedaris, Shonda Rhimes, Joyce Carol Oates, Billy Collins, David Baldacci, and David Mamet. I will tell you flat out of this list, I'm most inclined to watch James Patterson, R.L. Stine, and probably Shonda Rhimes. So let me know down below in the comments what you want to see, or if you've taken any of these masterclasses, let me know what you thought. If you took the Dan Brown Masterclass, what did you think about it? Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and I will take more masterclasses and talk about them. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.